Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Janet. We are indeed living in very interesting times, and my mind goes back to the opening lines of Charles Dickens's story, the big story of A Tale of Two Cities. He had written, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness." When we look around at us, when we see the state of the nations, the different nations, we indeed can make out we are living in the best of times as far as the Indian economy goes, and it is the worst of times when we look at the floundering economy of China, and when we look at the mindless twists and turns the US foreign policy is taking. So these are indeed very interesting times. I have with me our strategic affairs expert, Colonel L.S. Beast again. We do not have a structured basic subject to discuss on. This is going to be a freewheeling discussion on the different scenarios building up all over the world. We had very interesting, we are seeing hopefully the end game of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. I don't know whether it's the end game is upon us, but it looks like that is heading in some direction. We are living at a time when Trump seems to be on the war path against India for no rhyme or reason. I can't think of any particular reason why he is hell-bent on pushing his tariffs through against India. The mistake that he accuses India of doing, it is the same mistake which China is also doing. We are all buying crude from Russia. No wonder Russian crude is cheap and it is advantageous. India is following a policy of nation first, very steadfastly. India is sticking to a policy of nation first, and I'm sure a proud nation is not going to bow down before any bully who thinks he can get his way around the world by his threat of sanctions and tariffs. Well, Colonel LS, 15th of August on Indian Independence Day, we saw Putin and Trump meeting at Alaska. We can call it a historic kind of a meeting because of the kind of sanctions that have been imposed on Alaska, on Russia and on Putin also. In fact, it is said that their arrest warrants were out for Putin if he ever chooses to leave Russia. In fact, probably those were one of the reasons why he avoided attending the BRICS summit. He avoided the G20 summit in New Delhi. He didn't want to cause embarrassment, but this is something totally out of the blue. Arch enemy number one, Putin landing up on US soil. Firstly, what are your views on this Trump-Putin meet at Alaska?
It's a very major breakthrough, Rajiv, the Trump-Putin meeting in Alaska. Primarily, Alaska was a land which was sold uh, from Russia to US way back. And Putin also said that I feel at home while I am at Alaska. So it was a very major development, as you said, that there is almost an arrest warrant against Putin. And the two leaders, uh, the two leaders who have the power to destroy the earth many times. Probably Russia can destroy the earth with their nuclear weapons 1.5 times, and the US can destroy it once. So they are the biggest and strongest people who represent their nations. It's very, very interesting to see that the US President, President Trump, and the Russian President, President Putin, meeting in Alaska to discuss about a nation who had no representative there. So it is a very strange sort of a thing that you are deciding the fate of a nation whose rep is not there, even a European rep is not there. Thankfully, good sense had prevailed on President Donald Trump, that he had two people more beside him that is his foreign secretary and most probably the defense secretary also attending the meeting. And likewise, President Putin also had some extra members, including his foreign and defense ministers or whatever they call them. So nobody can now say that Trump used his good offices to meet Putin alone and do an underhand deal, because it was quite transparent and there was some kind of leaks also which were reported by various very reputed newspapers and news agencies in America, especially, who leaked out the reports of the conference. It was primarily agreed that there would be a peace deal, which Putin was uh, pushing for, and not a ceasefire. So we had Lavrov, their foreign minister, also the foreign minister of Russia, also saying that we don't want a temporary ceasefire, but we want a peace deal. Now, what are the things on the table they must have
Just a
discussed? Yes,
pause.
please.
Sorry for interrupting you. You mentioned Foreign Minister Lavrov. Foreign Minister Lavrov, when he landed up in Alaska, he was wearing a CCCP T-shirt. I hope you must have seen it. Does it mean the arrival of the good old days of the Soviet Union, or was he trying to send out a message?
Yes, yes, yes. It was very much a message which he was trying to show. As a matter of fact, now since you have diverted, let me take the
No, no,
discussion to
I don't want to take you away from your chain of thoughts. It's just a sidelight. But let's
the
skip this. Let's skip
Ukraine.
this as a sidelight. I'd like to you to take on your main course of thought.
Okay, with this interjection, I want to just tell this thing that I was just reading that there is a very deep connect. There is a deep connect between the Ukrainians and Russians, and there is a Slavic national pride. The Russians never deem Ukraine as a separate entity, and they say that it's a 1,000-year-old ancestral connection with them. So there were intermarriages and lots of other things, unless this breakup of the Soviet Union happened. And Putin is one person who was boxed in East Germany while this wall was being broken, and there were a lot of people gunning for the Russians. So Putin survived. He's a survivor. He's got 43 attempts on his lives. So they say that cats have 9 lives. So Putin already has 43 lives so far. So
Outlived the cat.
uh, so you will see that a lot of Rasputin numbers are being played with Putin at the as a central theme to it. So it's very interesting. Now coming back to the uh, Alaska meet. Alaska meet, i- i- absence of any rep of the state whose future is being decided reminds me of the Yalta conference. You must be remembering the
Yeah.
Yalta conference of 1945, when the three big strongmen gathered in
Then big
Yalta.
powers. Then three big powers.
Ye-
Yes.
yeah. And the winners of the World War II, that were notably Franklin D. Roosevelt, Joseph Stalin, and Winston Churchill. And these three people decided on the fate of the continent of Europe. Boundaries were drawn, and there was a sort of uh, decision of making a Eastern Bloc and a Western Bloc. Western Bloc essentially became the NATO, and then the Eastern Bloc became the Warsaw Pact countries. So they decided on the fate of the continent of Europe without having any European present there. So, is it a Yalta conference too? If I say for Alaska, it won't be wrong, because no rep of the Europeans were there, and no rep from Ukraine itself was there. Ukraine was a buffer state between the NATO and the Russia, and Russia. And Putin had drawn a red line that please don't cross it, don't get Ukraine into NATO, otherwise I'll have to go in for a war. Because you see, he had already annexed Crimea in 2014 and he had an access to the Black Sea. So that was being threatened. And there were a number of NATO countries, representatives found in the region of Zaporizhia, and they were all roasted alive because Russians dropped certain amount of bombs which entered the underground facilities. Probably the nukes and chemical weapons were also said to be found there. So they have made a corridor. Uh, the corridor is of the four provinces, that is Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, and apart from Crimea. And now they are bombarding the region of Odessa and also northern Ukraine and also Kyiv or Kiev, as they used to call it earlier. So primarily they are giving a message to both NATO, the US, and the EU that they mean business. And prior to this particular meeting in Alaska, they had uh, uh, driven a lot of military campaigns within the Ukraine. So it is aggressive posturing and giving a message that Russia means business. And
And I'd like
probably
just like to interrupt you again on this. Uh, uh, Before we go on to the conflict per se, uh, I'd like to ask you, in your opinion, who needed this meet more? Was it Trump or was it Putin? From what I can gather, my views are Putin didn't want to confine this meeting to just Ukraine. He wanted to push Russia back into the center of action as the big power, uh, maybe rehabilitate Russia back in the world power domination system. Russia had suffered some loss of face when they had to draw from Syria. But this meeting with Trump in Alaska on U.S. territory has been used by the Russians as a way to reinvent itself, as a way to once again underline the message that yes, we remain a great power, and you have to talk to us on equal terms. Who needed this meet more, in your view?
both of them needed it. Russia, as you said, that they have to reassert their domination. This is a time when the United States is losing its superpower, sole superpower status. So Russia has to show his domestic audience that he matters a lot in the international stage. And President Vladimir Putin is a very, very meticulous person. Nothing happens which is just unplanned or spontaneous. It is well planned and it is following a timeline. Right from the time when he occupied Crimea in 2014, Putin had his ideas clear and he had his timeline and he wanted to show to the world that he meant business. He wanted these territories. Primarily, he had an intention initially, if you must remember, somewhere near the last week of February in 2022, 24th, they came in. And the very reason they said that why they were attacking Ukraine was denazification and demilitarization of Ukrainian forces who were subjecting a lot of people, Russian speaking people in these bordering eastern provinces, who were torturing the Ukrainians because they were Russian speaking. There is probably some amount of religious affairs also. Uh, these people, Russians, are Orthodox Christians, and Orthodox Christians are different from Protestant and Catholic Christians. So, west of Dnipro River is Catholic, Protestants, and all. A majority of them are Catholics, but east of Dnipro are Orthodox. So there's some kind of unease and Putin had his ideas clear. So Putin needed this kind of a world stage wherein he comes back to his home, addresses his people. There is a lot of morale boosting which is required because this is a very prolonged war, and there have been reversals within Russia also. Now, coming to the US, yes, President Trump very badly needed that he is a very, very efficient deal maker. Deal is the word. So he's looking for a deal wherein if he addresses Putin directly and he's at the helm of affairs, he thinks that it will bring him a lot of glory and probably make him a very, very strong contender for the Nobel Peace Prize. So both of them have their dynamics, and the U.S. Under President Trump wants to sideline the Europeans in this conflict because, as I told you, that it is a sort of a Yalta conference which they are reliving right now. So minus even UK at that time in 1945, you had Winston Churchill as a main player, but now it is only the two big people, that is Putin and President Trump. So as far as your question goes, both of them needed it, but yes, probably Trump needed it more. President Trump needed it more because his policies are drawing a lot of criticism from professionals, from citizens, from Senate, from congressmen. So he needed some miracle, and this was the opportunity which he seized, Raji.
Trump is pushing his image as some kind of a peacemaker, and of course, with the ultimate goal of getting the Nobel Peace Prize. All the best to him. I know, as it is, I don't know what kind of value it is still attached to the Nobel Peace Prize. We have had very dubious recipients of the Nobel Peace Prize in recent times. And if Trump gets the Nobel Peace Prize, we'll wish him all the very best. But, well, now coming to the Zelensky trip to Washington after the Putin-Trump Alaska meet. In fact, Zelensky was actually the words that I was told. Zelensky was summoned to the White House. I mean, he was told to make himself available at the White House to listen to the diktats of Trump. And Trump had, I believe so, that Trump had a new map of Ukraine ready based on the inputs which he had received from President Putin. And this was the map which President Trump wanted to hand over to President Zelensky, some kind of a fait accompli. And it is then that the European club all got behind Trump, all got behind Zelensky, and they all ended up in the White House. So, how do you view this congregation of the European leaders at the White House? I mean, did they act as some kind of a buffer for President Zelensky, or did their support help in any way?
Actually speaking, the Europeans have sold their sovereignty. Uh, this NATO thing, wherein the US was giving an umbrella protection to the Europeans, they have neglected their military and the pride of people like Germans. They were very proud people, and then your even England or UK and Italians, and then others who were attending French. Then Finland president was also there. So all these people accompanied there, and they were not treated very well because they were made to wait outside while President Trump was speaking to President Putin on phone. And there are certain amount of leaks by the Guardian and Associated Press, and then again some Carnegie Endowment and all such people. That may be speculation, that may be, but I don't want to go into those things. But they are very well printed, and our viewers will get educated if they see the leaks of the Alaska meet. But primarily, if I say that there is some kind of agreement wherein uh, President Trump has succumbed to President Putin's claim over these four regions. As you said, that there was a map which has been made ready, and probably there may be some kind of arrangement between Russia and US, wherein Russia allows some kind of exploration rights near Alaska within Russian territory, Russian waters. So there's some kind of this thing, and also about the minerals, rare earth minerals within Ukraine, and also rebuilding of Ukraine. So Ukraine used to be the breadbasket. So now what has happened, that these European nations also were kind of summoned, because you see, I told you that without the stakeholders, the Europeans are the stakeholders, and US is supposed to be a person who was supposed to provide umbrella protection to Ukraine and the Europeans. So what has happened is that he had summoned all these people to the White House for a meeting, and in that meeting, uh, primarily it was termed as security guarantee to Ukraine. So it was not a security guarantee only to the Ukraine, but also a sort of a financial and military understanding, which President Trump is trying to sell it to the Europeans, that if you want protection from me, kindly increase your defense budgets, kindly make your armies available, because the US is not ready to put its boots on ground. And under President Trump, now they are not even ready to finance the wars which the Europeans always find themselves in. So there are some people who have succumbed to the US pressures, and four nations have volunteered to give 1 billion worth of weapons which will be bought from the United States and provided to Ukraine. Now, these countries are very small countries: Norway, Sweden, the Netherlands, and then one more country, Denmark. So they have pledged 1 billion worth of funds for supplying weapons to Ukraine. Uh, Netherlands, for one, is supplying 500 million worth of Patriot missile defense system and its parts to Ukraine. And also Germany and some other UK and one more country has pledged almost some amount of money. So primarily these people had gathered there, wherein President Trump has made it very clear for them that you have to provide the funds for fighting further. It is, in other words, United States is the only country which could have provided funds in that scale. They have already provided $70 billion into the Russian-Ukraine war. Now, how can you expect these small countries to conjure so much of funds, to collect so much of funds and provide it for war? So it is another method by which President Trump would be choking this war to an end. Now, you are getting a clearer picture as to what has happened in Alaska. So this is one of it. Now, there was one more twist. When President Zelensky says that I will be getting some amount of security guarantees, that includes $90 billion of weapons from America for Ukraine, that will be bought in due course of time. $90 billion. Now you can
Who's
imagine
going to pay for that?
that.
The money has to come from NATO. Zelensky is in no position to pay for the arms that he is going to get. Uh, Most probably the NATO members will be tasked to, like as Trump said, the big beautiful check will come from the NATO member countries.
It will be not exactly Zelensky, and neither would it be the United States. It would be somewhere in between. So if they get some donors within EU has got EU, that is European Union, has got some amount of funds which can be diverted. So that kind of funds nobody will be able to give. So the companies within which will be operating within the region of Ukraine, uh, for example, rebuilding of Ukraine, BlackRock has been given the task. So these companies would be, as they start mining, as they start benefiting, uh, probably Monsanto will be selling the seeds and they will be reconstructing the country. So these contracts would go into billions of dollars. So probably they will take the uh, goodies out of Ukraine and then send some amount of money. This is an old model.
But
This
when
is
one
an old
looks
model.
back, and in fact, when history in the future will look back on this war, I think some kind of an opinion will form as to how a country was destroyed on the altar of so-called patriotism. Ukraine was pushed into this war. They were sort of goaded to take on the Russians, and then now they are being left high and dry. Already, the flower of Ukraine's youth is lost, dead. In fact, the average age of the Ukrainian army is now they're saying it's about 48 years. That's pretty old for an army which is fighting a modern war. We have been discussing Ukraine. Now let us take a step back and look at the situation, the trade war. So we can call it the trade war between India and USA. Uh, in fact, the one statement from President Putin during the post summit press meet at Alaska, he brought out the very shallow nature of the U.S. sanctions on India when he said that Russia-U.S. trade has increased by 20%, and the fact that USA has increased its trade with Russia takes away all kind of legitimacy that U.S. sanctions have on India. How do you think is it
Yeah,
justified on the part of the USA to sanction India?
there is no justification on these kind of things, and that's what a lot of economists within the United States have also brought out. Because in the initial days before April 2025, USA was going in a particular direction, which was quite logical. A lot of FDI was flowing in. A lot of trust was there in the US dollars, and almost 41 trillion worth FDI had flown in US, and suddenly because of these tariffs, which has been imposed left, right, and center, not only India, across the world, uh, there has been a very, very bad kind of economic stability or trust factor which the nations are facing in US, and there will be a flight of capital outside US. As a matter of fact, Bank of America has estimated that $41 trillion would take a flight from America, and also the stock markets, all the three of them of whatever combined strength, 6 trillion would be lost. So these are the kind of figures which are coming out of America. Now, uh, as far as India is concerned, they are saying that these tariffs are being applied because India is supplying uh, cash flow or funds to Russia because of oil imports from Russia. Now we are doing it, yes, and it is a fact. But taking crude oil and then refining it and then selling it is nobody's business. How can you tell a independent sovereign nation that you will not buy energy from hydrocarbons from Russia? Because it is energy security for a huge nation of 1.44 billion people. So India has to look for its own interest. Now they are not putting similar kind of pressure on China. There are reports that there was a pipeline going to Romania, Hungary, and all those places. Druzhba pipeline, which has been recently destroyed by Ukrainian forces. Uh, Romania, these all countries were getting Russian oil. So, and US itself is getting a lot of uranium and other things from Russia. So it is not justified. Now it is like the old system, my way or the highway, uh, which the US is trying to put pressure on India through tariffs. But I would like to add to it that it will hardly be of 1% dent on our GDP. It's very less. And within no time, India has been already been doing some kind of free trade agreements across the world, and that will be offsetting this particular tariff. And as a matter of fact, there will be a few things which will be very scarce and very expensive within the United States because, uh, like Indian diamonds, they will not be available to the US because India is exporting 90% of the world diamonds which are cut and polished. So they will not get it. Then generic medicines. So what happens under such circumstances is that certain other countries which do not have these kind of tariffs, it goes via those countries. Because if you see that even the oil which we are purchasing from Russia, quite a bit of it is being paid by dirhams, the UAE dirhams, United Arab Emirates dirhams. So Russia has the flexibility to buy it from uh, uh, buy a lot of other things in dirhams, and he's also comfortable, and we are also comfortable. But it is a non-dollar trade. So it is routed via some other country. So even you have sanctioned Russia. Russia is not short of any goods and services because it can buy through other means. And that is what Goran, some name is there, the mission, the embassy of Russia in India. Uh, He says that we know a number of ways in which we can circumvent the sanctions, and they have got means by which they can buy the things which they require from the world market. So these sanctions, though not justified, but will be hardly of any effect. And as a matter of fact, we were sanctioned in 1971, 1998, and Indian economy grew and also became self-sustained. So it is a good sign for us as far as sanctions and tariffs are concerned. Rajiv.
We had, like you mentioned, the Russian trade representative in the trade representative of Russia in the Russian embassy here. In fact, he said that we are ready to take on all the Indian textiles and Indian diamonds that we have been sending to the USA. You can divert them to Russia. Similar statement has also come in from Japan. They are willing to take on Indian textiles. So I don't think India is going to lose much of a market, although some political elements in the country are trying to paint a very scary picture of jobs being lost and all. But the Indian economy is strong enough to withstand those kind of shocks. We survived the COVID, and we survived pretty well, and we can survive this limited US sanctions also. Uh, Diamonds, like you had mentioned, the UAE route. In fact, UAE is also approached India. They are willing to take on our diamonds, and they are going to export it to the USA under UAE level. So that the Indian uh, uh, the Indian kitty doesn't get harmed in any way. But now let's get. Is Trump taking it personally? Is this trade thing with India, this trade battle with India? I think it is now evolving into some kind of a personal ego issue for the U.S. president. Is it something to do with Prime Minister Modi, or what is it actually?
There's more to it than just personal this thing. Although I don't know how a democracy in the United States is functioning, wherein a president has been given such sweeping powers, wherein he can uh, impose tariffs and do all such kind of things, and there's no involvement of the Congress. So, what kind of constitution they have and what kind of judiciary they have? There were some Supreme Court cases also in the United States, which questioned these tariffs, these indiscriminate tariffs. That how can a person single-handedly do this thing? But these things are happening because they select an administration, and in which the personality of the US president always imposes upon their secretaries. That is what we call ministers in India. They do it there. And you are very right that it has hurt the ego of President Trump, especially after the battering the Pakistanis got during Op Sindoor. And probably there are some rumors that some facilities in Kirana Hills and Noor Khan Air Base, Sargodha, Jacobabad, some American assets like F-16s and their radars and other things were hit. So probably that has taken a toll. And when he said 27 times that I have done a truce, there was no response or acknowledgement from India, from the Indian side. And then what President Trump has been doing is getting a lot of his uh, allies and their leaders within White House, and they have not been treated with the dignity. So probably he wanted to do the same, but India is a different ball game altogether. In our last podcast also, I had said that whichever side India goes, whether it tilts towards the BRICS or it goes towards the West, that side becomes most powerful. So now is the time of reckoning when you are seeing that India is tilting towards the BRICS. So probably we are improving. Our relationships are already improving with Russia. Our relationships are improving with China as well, which was supposed to be a very big rival and adversary. You are saying
Yeah,
something.
we're coming towards the end of our show. One topic which we wanted to discuss, but I think we'll have to do a separate show on that, the Indo-China relations that is evolving presently. We'll do it separately. Before we end, I'd like to request our viewers to like and subscribe our channel, and also do comment on the content that we put out. This will help in extending the reach of our channel. Thank you, Colonel Bish. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Looking forward to meeting you again soon, and we will discuss India China and the emerging India China tango.
Thank